So just flip the formula. But now it's sales minus profit equals expenses, meaning I'm going to first determine what I should pay myself, what type of profit I should have. Then based on what's left over, I'm going to force myself, I'm going to give myself this arbitrarily lower number that I now need to run my gym on. It's crazy. I've done profit first in my own business for 3 years. You figure out how to make your business work on the smaller expense number.
What's up, fitness fans? Welcome back to the Future of Fitness podcast and interview series. This is your host, Eric Malzone. Episode number 149. I talked to John Briggs. So John is coming out with a new book, Profit First for Microgyms. And if you don't know what Profit First is, it's an accounting system originally originated by Michael Michalowicz in his book, Profit First. And it's widely applicable to any type of company. And I think if there's one thing that a lot of small business owners don't know or aren't privy to, it's how to deal with their money, how to put profit first. Get it? That's the title. How to put that first so that you're paying yourselves and you're optimizing the business and keeping it healthy as possible. It really comes down to simple habits of how you deal with your money and rules that you put on the business that you're not overspending in certain areas. And they've come down to a very, very specific formula. My personal experience with Profit First has been amazing. I implemented it with my gyms and saved me a lot of money, increased my profit margin quite a bit. And I use it for a lot of other things. I mean, just the principles in general for personal use for my family and I, it's great. So a lot of great nuggets here. John specifically is moving this system into microgyms. So boutique gyms, CrossFit gyms, things like that. He's part owner of a CrossFit gym, so he walks the walk for sure. And you're going to learn a lot. And a lot of this comes down to the money mindset of gym owners and the problems that they face. So it's not just a money thing, right? Money is just a symptom of a problem. So you'll get a lot out of this. I sure did. Love talking to John. He's a great guy, really nice guy. So before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by Level 5 Mentors. I am happy and excited, thrilled actually to be part of Level 5 Mentors in business coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs. It's a great pleasure of mine. I love getting people unstuck and moving towards their ideal lifestyle and business because that's what I do on a daily basis. I'm always striving for it. It never ends, and it's a lot of fun. So go to Level 5 Mentors, and if you do feel stuck, or maybe you just want to get some kind of gauge, some kind of metric of how you're doing as an entrepreneur, we do have an assessment out there. You can go click on it, and I believe it's about 8 questions. It'll give you really, really good insights. And once you do that, go ahead and schedule a call, and we'll chat with you and see where you're at and see what kind of problems you're facing and how we can help you get unstuck. So level5mentors.com, LEVEL 5 mentors.com. Without further ado, this is episode number 149 with John Briggs. Enjoy the show. And we're live. Mr. John Briggs, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to have you. And let's see, you and I probably crossed paths like years ago, but we've now been chatting more frequently due to the Slack community at Elite Gym Insiders. So there's a plug for that, elitegyminsiders.com.
Yeah, totally.
You always offer a ton of value in the conversations that take place in there. And I think, I'm excited to talk about what you're up to and Profit First and all those things. But maybe we could just start off, John, just give us your story, man. Kind of give us your background.
Okay. Well, I graduated from BYU with a master's degree in tax and actually decided to take a job in a door-to-door industry right outside of college. And that company, they made $30 million in the same year they declared bankruptcy.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could potentially get into that conversation after I share my background. It's a great story about Parkinson's law. Okay. But because I was going down, I decided, well, I have this master's degree in tax. I've interned at Deloitte. I should probably get back into that. So I got back into it. And then a whole bunch of other stuff happened. I eventually found myself on my own, having the need to put food on the table as my own tax professional and solopreneur. And then it kind of grew from there. During that process, I came across the Pumpkin Plan written by Mike Michalowicz, which actually was what introduced me to Profit First, which we're going to talk a lot about that probably on here. But the Pumpkin Plan was awesome because it teaches you how to identify your top clients and how to duplicate them. But at the time, I didn't even know what my top clients were. So I did his analysis. Mike always provides amazing tools in his books. And I realized, wow, I have a lot of microgym clients that are amazing. I like working with them. They respect what I'm asking them to do when it comes to taxes. They're not like doctors or lawyers where sometimes they know so much that they can't possibly take advice from somebody else.
Right.
Like, man, I want to duplicate these guys. So we started down that road. And the more I got down that rabbit hole, I realized there's a lot of just their experiences that I wasn't familiar with. And so like most people would do, you buy into a CrossFit gym just to get the experience. And that's what I did. So yeah, last year I bought into the gym that I was going to because I saw the signs that I've seen in our hundreds of clients. I'm like, hey, I think you might be going out of business. I don't know anything about your numbers, but just guessing because I don't see you doing any of the things you need to do to stay in business. And instead of the owner telling me, dude, just go screw yourself. Like, who are you, Mr. Member, who doesn't ever get first place in any of the WODs anyways? Who are you to tell me how to run my gym? But instead he said, why don't we go to lunch? And we went to lunch, and at lunch he actually said, you're right. I'm not making money, and I've tried to sell it a couple times. I need help. I need someone to help light the fire back inside of me. And so we took it from there, and I've been an owner for a year. It's been a very interesting ride. We've been implementing Profit First, but man, I can tell you the insight that I've been able now to provide to my team members that I'm getting on the gym owner side has really helped our services. Just we're so much better now than we were last year just because of this experience. So that's probably a roundabout background for me.
Yeah, it's excellent. I'd be curious because, I presume before gym owners, you've worked with you mentioned you've worked with a lot of different professionals, right?
Yep.
How is the gym business now that you're in it, right? Like you got in it, now you're in it. You're like knee deep, right? If not waist deep.
Over my head, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. I'm just saying it all in a nice way, in the gym business. How does it differ? How are the challenges different than, let's say, like a dentist or, an attorney or something like that? How is the gym business different?
The biggest difference I've seen is that because fitness can appear simple, everybody and their brother thinks they know how to run a fitness business. A dentist isn't going to have one of their patients come to them and say, hey, I think you need to do this in your practice. A lawyer is not going to get that. I've never gotten that as a tax professional. Someone just saying like, hey, I really think maybe you should change your schedule. Yet as a gym owner, and maybe because you're just so involved on a day-to-day basis where these other professionals you only see once or twice a year, wow, the opinions that gym members have, it's sometimes hard to filter through the loud minority. And that's been the biggest difference. There's a lot more drama involved than I ever thought would be possible. Because before being a gym owner, we're dealing with their financial statements. We're like, we can tell you from the numbers, you need another revenue source. You don't sell nutrition, you need to add nutrition. You don't offer personal training, you need to sell personal training. Your margins are terrible. You're paying your coaches too much. Your rent expenses, like we can do all that stuff when we've been able to do that. But you never realized until getting into it that by telling someone, hey, you need to add another revenue stream, you might actually have 50 members that get pissed off that you're trying to add another revenue stream. Or one of ours, which when I first bought in, probably a common mistake, we had an unlimited package, and the previous owners, unlimited meant everything. Yoga classes, only, they paid the one fee, they could do whatever the hell they wanted. I'm like, you're losing a ton of money here on these sessions for this expert coach for this specialty program because you're not charging for it. And so we got rid of that. We even had members who never attended the other sessions tell us how devalued their membership now was because we took away classes that they never had actually attended in the last year anyways. And then we were going to start charging extra for it. You don't get that experience unless you've been in it. So now, like when we give advice to gym owners, we let them know we understand what this means, and we understand it's not going to be a 1 week fix, but you should really consider it, because from a financially fit standpoint, the financially fit gyms are able to do this. And if you want to be financially fit, then you need to consider it.
Yeah. It's a really good point you brought up, because, in the micro gym and the CrossFit world, you are equal parts community manager and leader, an equal part business person, right? And it presents a lot of unique challenges. I mean, it's great in so many ways. Like if you have a great community, I miss my community in Santa Barbara all the time, right? Do I miss those moments where you get pulled aside by someone and they're like, I noticed that you're running 6-week challenges and it just doesn't feel the same anymore. And like, well, God, I apologize that you don't feel the same way anymore. My bank account feels much differently than you do. And so does my grocery bill, right? And like it's an interesting thing. And people, I think there's an assumption that you have to martyr yourself as a gym owner within the CrossFit community or the micro gym community. I'm not going to blame too much on CrossFit, but it's just true. And everyone has access to you, right? Like we're always running events. Like there's always an event. I can't imagine. My wife was always not impressed with how many times I'm like, well, I would love to, but there's it's someone's birthday from the gym. Like, really? That was supposed to be our night. I'm like, yeah, well,
yeah,
it up to you, right?
Sorry.
So there's a lot that goes into it. And I think it's an interesting thing is the emotional people aspect of running a community is, I relate it, maybe someone will get mad at me for saying this, but I relate it to like being a religious community leader, like a priest or a pastor or something like that, right? Where it's very similar. You have like a flock of people that you're responsible for, right? Yep. Everybody has an opinion. So, a lot of armchair quarterbacking, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's a great term. I think the gym owners face that other industries don't deal with. We have the complaint because, of course, if you ask for feedback the wrong way, you also get the wrong type of feedback, and you get the loud minority responding, right? And we did that. We did a couple experiments, and the way we requested feedback just was stupid. But some of them were like, well, the gym owners they're not around enough. And I'm thinking, literally since the day I bought in, either myself, my business partner, or both of us have been at every single event that the gym has put on. Like we're not going to sit in the gym 12 hours a day for every session. We're not going to work out on every session. But we just were not present enough.
Yeah.
Can't win.
Yeah, it's the thing I heard the most that eventually I just tuned out because I heard so much was, well, it just doesn't feel the same. You're not there anymore. It doesn't feel the same. And that happened when I pulled myself off the schedule completely, about year 4 or 5, and just did, a couple classes and taught that. And everyone's like, well, it just doesn't feel the same, without you and Traver, coaching classes as much. And yeah, interesting. I want to get back to this, what you mentioned in the beginning about working with a $30 million company that went bankrupt.
Okay.
Give us some details on how is that possible? Talk to me.
So let me paint this scenario. I'm sitting in my office, and the president of the company, at the time I was the controller, which if you don't know, that's like the head accountant. I'm sitting in my office as the controller, and the president comes running in, and he's totally out of breath. And he's like, dude, you won't believe this, but you got to close your doors and don't let anyone know that you're here today. What are you talking about? We're accountants. It was myself and 2 other accountants. I mean, pretty low key position. You expecting the mafia? I mean, what kind of trouble did you get yourself into? He's like, well, all those checks that we just handed out, I'm like, the checks from this company retreat. So at the end of every year with the door-to-door sales company, they have this big event, and they give the back end checks. So most sales reps will get paid some sort of stipend over the course of the summer, and then they reconcile at the end. And those who did really well get big checks. So we had handed out $30,000, $20,000. I mean, one guy got like $70,000 like in one check because how well they produced during the summer. It's like all those checks we just sent out, they're going to bounce. And when all those sales reps come back in for you to recut the checks, those are going to bounce too. Because the owner didn't get the $1 million loan that he'd been working on. Like, okay, And it's one of those moments where you hear them talking, or you kind of take a step out of your body and you're like watching the scene.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't even comprehend what you're saying is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because in my mind, I backtracked to 6 months prior when I sat down with them and I showed them this image of this super sexy spreadsheet. And I laid out for them, hey, for every sale that we get with all of our expenses, we're keeping $8. So $800 in revenue, we actually get to use $8 of that for future growth.
Wow.
That's a terrible margin I think in every industry. And they're like, dude, you're so paranoid. I'm like, no, look, there's this new thing sweeping the business community and they're calling it a budget. And I think we need to implement that. And they're like, dude, John, you're so paranoid. We're just going to sell more. I'm like, if you just sell, you're only making $8 per sell. Why? Anyway, so it was like one of those least satisfying I told you so moments of my life. But I'm like, now do you believe me that we need a budget? But the sad part is that now I'm out of a job and so were hundreds of other people because this Nimrod couldn't run a company. And I mean, it's crazy to think on a $30 million business, it sometimes isn't that hard to acquire another $1 million loan. But in this case, the company was so leveraged that no one was going to touch it. And yeah, so the paychecks bounced and sales reps went to competing companies. And the company was forced into bankruptcy.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a lot of interesting lessons that I think we can parlay there, right? I think, first of all, when you look at Microgyms, what's the target profit margin that you deem as minimum health?
Minimum health? Man, if you're not above 10%, you're screwed.
Okay.
But we've found financially, so as part of writing the book, I spent a lot of time researching financially fit gyms, which I classified as I was willing to talk to them if their net income was 20% or higher. And so just to clarify for those who may not, they hear some of these terms and sometimes we assume they know it. Net income is total revenue minus all your expenses. That's your net income. Not quite the same thing as profit from cash flow. So just to make sure we're not combining terms, profit is basically if I look at all the cash that comes in and then I look at all the cash that goes out, what cash is left over? That's the simple way we look at profit. That's what the profit first method is based on. Net income is slightly different. You can have cash leaving the business. It's not technically an expense based on accounting things. But anyway, so we looked at companies that were 20% or more, and we actually found 30 to 35% is like the elite level. If a microgym is running at a 30 to 35% net income or higher, they're crushing it. They should be very proud of themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, another thing that was interesting to me is I think a lot of gyms I know a lot of gyms don't know their numbers as well as they should. Not shocking to you, I'm sure, to hear me say that. But also, I think there's a great, percentage of people who are like, well, I think my numbers are around here, but there's not as much left in the bank account every month as I'd like. So I just need more members.
Just need more members. Just need 10 more members, Eric. Just 10 more members. I'll be set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we start? Right. Let's give that situation. And I can talk about my personal experience with Profit First, which was amazing. I mean, the first thing I did, actually my wife came in, she started cleaning up the books and helping me out. And she didn't know anything, but we just kind of talked about the plan, and she's so good with numbers and spreadsheets, sexy spreadsheets, by the way, it's really funny. And the first thing we did is we went, and I think we did hire a Profit First consultant, and we just got rid of we looked at all of the monthly reoccurring expenses.
Yep.
That was about $1,600 a month that I got back. Right.
Yep.
That was like, okay, we could stop there and I'm happy. Right. But then we kept going and looking at different things. And sometimes it resulted in uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable conversations with people and staff. But these are things that just needed to happen for the business to get, on the right path. And, I think by the time I sold, I was at a 23% profit margin,
which is great.
So it was great. Everything worked out well. The story ended well. But, over 9 years of gym ownership, you're going to go through highs and lows, right? Seasonalities and learning mistakes and all those things, because there is no book written on how to do this whole microgym thing yet, right? So where do we start? Like where do you start with people?
Well, let me first say, I think there's no magic one starting point. My advice is if someone is feeling the cash, like that they're bleeding cash.
Yeah.
Pick the idea that sounds the least intrusive, the easiest for them to do. One thing I've heard is this idea that success precedes motivation. And I really like that concept. Mm-hmm. And so let's give ourselves a little bit of the success. Two Brain, I'm a big fan of Two Brain, and they talk about bright spots. And it's like, give yourself a bright spot. So like where you started, analyzing your expenses could be a great place to start. Another great place to start is to actually figure out where you are bleeding cash. So for example, we have a free 5-day challenge we offer to gym owners. And it's taken this idea of let's analyze the cash flow and financial health of your business. We broke it up into 5 digestible chunks that should take no more than like 10 minutes a day. Break it up into 5 days. And by the end of the 5th day, you've effectively given yourself an analysis, and you can see, oh, I'm overpaying myself, or I'm not paying myself enough, which means I'm spending too much over here on my operating expenses. I'm not saving enough for taxes. I thought of this idea of giving myself a profit distribution. So you can start on any one of those aspects. But yeah, if you want to get into it, I'm happy to share a couple tips that everyone can potentially do with cutting expenses, at least.
Sure.
You're going to want to schedule out some time, because if you're not in love with your numbers and accounting, this may feel like a hero WOD or some hour-long workout where by the end you want to lay on the ground and cry a little bit. But you'll feel good just like you do after a great workout. So you want to start with your bank statements and credit card statements and really look at the last 12 months. And there's a couple things you can do. You want to go through it and start putting circles around any expenses that are for team members' pay, that are recurring expenses, and expenses you feel like are critical to staying in business. When it comes to that analysis, I like to tell people, don't worry about these terms you might have heard, such as variable expenses or fixed costs, those kind of weird accounting terms. I want you to think about your expenses in the sense of, is it productive for my gym or business, or is it not productive? Does it improve my client's experience? Does it increase my cash flow? Does it lead to immediate profit? Does it support systems that my members enjoy? Those are productive. If it doesn't fit those criteria, then you need to consider cutting it. And it's likely when you're talking about the $1,600 you found per month, you probably went through the same thing, like, oh my gosh, this is duplicate expense here. I don't need this. I'm not actually utilizing this full service. Oh, there's a free service for the one part that I'm utilizing it. I'm thinking right now with Zen Planner. We have Zen Planner in our gym. I'm so tired of how hard it is to get accurate data from their super convenient, customizable reports. Yeah. I'm like, really, at this point, Zen Planner is serving as our attendance check-in. That's it. Yeah. Because I can't rely on the data, any other data in there.
No.
And it's super expensive to use as a merchant processing, like shopping cart thing as well, because they force you to use Pay Simple, which doesn't give you the best rates, No. Right. So that type of analysis would lead me to, okay, I need my members to be able to check in. I need to check for these reports, but can I do this for less money? And I don't know, maybe you had some of these experiences when you analyzed your expenses.
For sure. I mean, I think merchant processing fees is something that no one really pays attention to until you pay attention to it. And then it's going to A, piss you off. And B, you're going to want to start looking immediately for ways to save yourself, hundreds, if not much more every month, right? Depending on how much you're billing. I have a billing anywhere between 30 and 50 grand a month, and you start taking percentages of that, oof, man, it's a lot of money. And I mean, going back, like if I'm working with someone who's developing an amazing CRM, because one of the reasons is a lot of his stuff, almost all of the day-to-day redundant activities are automated through his software. It provides a great client experience, but also the billing is so simple. The reporting is so easy, right? It's all done through Stripe, and it has a very, very small percentage that you actually pay. And the things like you're talking about, like how do we get good reporting? Reporting made no sense with any of them. I did Zen Planner, Wodify, MindBody, Front Desk. I did all of this, and I tried them all because, you know, I was like, the only thing I wanted was good, reliable reporting. And it just made no sense. I'm like, why am I $27,000 this month? And then it shoots up to $46,000 the next month, right? Like, how does that happen? I would call, they're like, oh, we don't really know. Okay, great.
Yeah, we don't know. Well, can you find out? You're
paying $350 a month, right? And I think the other thing I looked into is how can I saved a lot of money on insurance, right? I went out and got a couple competitive insurance quotes. So you can shop a lot of this stuff around. You can shop out merchant processing, be like, hey, here's what I have now. Can you beat it? Right. And those are some of the big areas was insurance, merchant processing,
vendor supplies.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And then also looking at stuff like how much inventory am I keeping on the shelf when it comes to retail, right? Is that necessary? Like, what are my margins on it? Am I actually tracking my retail? Like, do I know how much I'm actually selling? These are all things that were big epiphanies for me. But I think, yeah, the insurance, like any major cost that you have that can be shopped around competitively, do it, right? Because people want your business. So that was some of the epiphanies. I mean, I had many, but that was some of the big ones.
Yeah, no, and that's what kind of analyzing your expenses are going to help you realize, because most micro gym owners are busy trying to grow their gym community.
Yes.
Improve the experience for their members. They're not taking the time and setting aside to do this stuff because honestly, it's not appealing. Okay, should I sit down and look at 12 months of statements or talk to Susie? Sure. Hey, Susie, how's it going? How are things? You know?
Yeah.
But any little excuse that you can come up with, that's going to take precedent over generally, most gym owners are going to generally not want to do that.
Well, I think it's how you portray it. I looked at it as like, okay, I'm going to sit down for the next hour or 2 hours and see if I can make myself an extra $500 every month. That was it. I was like, okay, now I'm motivated, right? That's my grocery money, right? That's my car payment. That's a lot of things.
That's a lot.
So I think that's it's an excellent place to start. So, okay, so we've looked at our bank statements. We looked at our credit card statements. We're looking for all kinds of expenses that may be reoccurring or unnecessary. What next?
Well, once you do that, then you obviously want to cut the expenses you absolutely don't need. Cut them. And then the other ones, then it's the question of, can I get this for free or for less money somewhere else? So maybe switching your CRM. Wodify raised their prices when I just bought it at the gym. So they were switching over to Zen Planner. That was saving us some money because both of them have their problems and you just kind of pick your poison at this point. So just all those different things like Spotify, Pandora, how many music subscription softwares are you paying for? But honestly, it's kind of that simple. Now, if someone is super bleeding, we do, the Profit First book kind of suggests that the extreme is to cancel all your credit cards and get new numbers issued. Because then those vendors who you owe money to, they're going to call you. You do not need to worry about that. They will let you know that you owe them money. But it forces you to slow down and make the decision with every single transaction. Obviously, you're going to pay these people because you committed to it, but it could help you stop and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay this bill, but I don't actually need your services going forward. Thank you. And cancel that service. So if someone's super bleeding, that is one of the extreme methods that does work. It's not rocket science. It's just a matter of taking the time. I mean, every gym owner I've ever met is capable of doing this.
Yeah. It's interesting too. There's a lot of emotion behind this type of process too, because I think, you look at, I talk about Vanity Metrics all the time. What's your top end revenue? How many members do you have? And, being in a gym, I think at most we had 265 members, right? And then, as right before selling, we were right around 180. And my life at 180 was way better than 265. My profit, my amount of profit was the same. My margin was bigger. My, average client value is much bigger, but it took an emotional process for me to go through and be like, okay, yeah, I have these massive numbers that I tell everyone I have 265 members, but am I actually doing well? Right? Do I even want to know? Like, like there's an emotional aspect to it, because in one mind, you're so trained to think like, well, I'm doing great. I have 265 members and I'm X amount top end revenue. But I know in your gut, something's not right because the numbers aren't adding up. Your bank account seems a little thin at times, right? So getting past that emotional aspect, okay, I actually got to rip the Band-Aid here and see what's going on.
Yeah. And there's another component as well that we found. When you sit down and look at your expenses, you're basically telling yourself you made a bad decision. Yeah. If there's an expense you find you're going to cut, because you committed to that and thought at one point, this is a good idea. And now you're realizing this was not a good idea. And there's that element too, where you're now battling internally to try to, you have to tell yourself, yep, I did make a mistake. And that's okay. I can move past it, but I don't need to hide from that. I don't need to stick my head in the sand and pretend like I haven't made financial mistakes. I can just accept it, fix it, move on.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So once you get, your expenses somewhat under control, maybe you get, stabilized in your business, you start to understand like what your metrics are, what your, real metrics are, profit, right? What other metrics do you have, people? What are some of the KPIs you recommend?
So key performance indicators, KPIs, it kind of depends on the stage of business that they're in. Mm-hmm. But we do like average revenue per member as a baseline. We think looking at rent as a percentage of income is important.
Okay.
Overall, we also look at team member expense. What we've found in studying these elite gyms, if the gym's team member expense, and when I say team member, I'm talking about all coaches, and if they have additional support like a front desk attendant, or some of these joy girls, joy boys, whatever our positions are called.
Yeah. Ours was
the full gamut of all team members. If that's 44% of revenue, you're doing fine. You don't have to kill yourself. If you're above 44%, you really need to work hard to get it to 44%. But the elite gyms, they're down to 30 to 35% of their revenue, team member expense. So it's possible to get down that low. But those are some revenues that we like to look at sometimes. But here's the beauty of one of the reasons why I'm so in love with Profit First is because sometimes we get caught up in over sophisticating. And I see these people who are adding, well, I have this KPI and I'm tracking it this often. But what does that tell you? Like, sometimes they're tracking numbers that are actually the result of multiple other things going on. And so it's not really giving them good information. Profit First, the system is effectively designed as you look at the income that comes into your gym twice, and you do this twice a month, which is what we recommend. Sit down every 15 days. Income comes in. Now I'm going to take that income and I'm going to allocate it to different purposes right now, instead of doing the typical thing of income comes in, I'm going to spend money. And when I get to paying myself or payroll comes around, oh, I sure hope money's there. So this is like you're much more proactive and purposeful with the income before you even think about spending the money. And so to some degree, these are KPIs, because if you check and the money in your profit account continues to increase, that's a good metric. If the bank balance in my owner's pay actually is going up, that's a good, that means I'm winning. And so we recommend splitting up your income in a variety of different buckets. A lot of people have heard of the envelope method. Maybe our grandparents used it. But that's really what Mike Michalowicz did with the system is he said, let's create envelopes, but let's just do them as bank accounts. So income comes in, I have one income account as the bank account, and then I'm going to put a percentage into team member expense, a profit account, owner's pay account, because I need to make sure I'm getting paid or I'm going to get burnt out. And that doesn't do my community any good if I'm burnt out. Tax, you're going to have to pay the piper at some point. You might as well save it up over the course of the year. Equipment, and then operating expenses. And we recommend doing that twice a month. And that's, the idea of this eating smaller meals. I mean, I know there's, I guess, new data that maybe says that that's not good, but I think if most people broke up their bigger meals into smaller meals, they're going to be healthier.
Sure.
Like a bear versus a horse. Right? I mean, you look at the bear, he hibernates, comes out, eats a gigantic meal, hibernates again. Sure, strong, powerful, but pretty round. You look at a horse who grazes, a horse is ripped, shredded, like it's really lean. It's the same concept here with our money. We want to sit down and think about these things much more frequently, but in smaller doses so that we don't burn ourselves out. Anyway, so yeah, we recommend putting it into those different envelopes. And in fact, I mentioned that 5-day challenge. We suggest, based on the information that they put in as they do the homework each day, the analysis will give them the percentages to put into those various accounts.
Right on. So I know you have a book coming out, which is going to explain all of this in fine detail, I have no doubt. But when you look at the classical accounting systems and what Profit First is, let's maybe take a step back. What's the big differentiator in Profit First versus like a classical accounting system?
Yeah. So since the beginning of time, it seems like Adam and Eve came out with this formula: sales minus expenses equals profit. It's been this formula that's literally been around Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, like thousands and thousands of years. No one's ever challenged it. No one's ever looked at it. I think he was a friar, Luca Pacioli or something. He created the double entry accounting method. And literally that's what every accounting book has been based on ever since. And it's the same format. If someone actually were familiar with what their profit and loss looked like, you have income at the top, subtract the expenses, and you have profit left over. Profit First says the problem with that is that you're focusing on the wrong thing, right? The idea is that you're focusing on expenses and profit becomes an afterthought. So just flip the formula, same numbers, but now it's sales minus profit equals expenses, meaning I'm going to first determine what I should pay myself, what type of profit I should have. Then, based on what's left over, I'm going to force myself, I'm going to give myself this arbitrarily lower number that I now need to run my gym on. And amazingly enough, humans have found out that they are very creative when forced into those situations. You're just proactively forcing yourself in that scenario. And it's crazy. I've done Profit First in my own business for 3 years. Maybe you have some experience with it as well, but yeah, you figure out how to make your business work on the smaller expense number.
Yeah. Well, it goes with life in general too. It's like your life, your expenses go up and down with whatever your earnings are, right? And as an entrepreneur, like my earnings go up and down all the time. And luckily I have a wife who's very sane, right? She's like, no, this is our expenses for the month. Because if it was up to me, like, we're always renting new places because we're always moving and nomadic. And if it was up to me, like if I had a good month, I'd be like, hey, guess what? Next month we're staying in a freaking mansion. She'd be like, no, we're going to stick to the same budget every month, right? And if you do that, it's just life's a lot easier. And you just get used to like, well, no, that's my cap. That's what I get. That's all I get to use. That's it.
Yeah. What you just described is Parkinson's law, right? So the supply will always meet the demand. So like actually, if you think about the $30 million business that I worked for, what happened was because they weren't focusing on it, their expenses always expanded to match the cash available to spend.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with most of our behaviors, unless we have a system like this where we're purposefully setting aside the money ahead of time and then not allowing those expenses to expand into the available cash, because we've already said this cash isn't available anymore because it's for our specific purposes.
Nice. Nice. So, okay. So sales, profit, and generally the target is what, 33% is what you want for ideal for profit?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone should be working towards 33%. Absolutely.
So that leaves the remaining percentage for expenses. Okay. So we've kind of established, some of those numbers. What's like, now give us a little more meat. Like, how does the process actually work? I mean, we had talked about, starting with the bank account and the statements, but, we have different bank accounts, right? For each particular bucket or whatever you want to call it. What are some of the major details that go into Profit First?
Surprisingly enough, it is almost that simple. You make sure that your merchant processing and your checks, like it all goes into one income bank account. You then set up these other 5 accounts with your bank, 5 or 6 accounts. And then once a month, you're going to sit down, you're going to analyze what is the cash that came in the last 15 days, and you'll have your percentages. And so let's say your owner's pay percentage is 20% of the cash that came in. I'm going to take 20% of what's deposited in my income account. I'm going to put it in my owner's pay account. Maybe my tax percentage is 3%. I'm going to take 3% of that. I'm going to put in tax. And so you're moving these different percentages and actually doing the transfers twice a month into these various accounts. The remainder from the income account goes into your operating expense account. And now when you need to spend money, you look at the different accounts you have for the different purposes. But that's really that's the bread and butter of the Profit First system. Mm-hmm. You just have to figure out your percentages and you do it.
Yeah, you just do it, right? Just get disciplined. Random question for you. Where do you think what are some of the best states from a tax perspective to own a gym?
The best states?
Yeah, from a tax perspective. If you had to take a wild guess. Not California, right?
Not California.
Yeah, okay.
For sure. They actually passed a law that basically said we don't acknowledge independent contractors anymore. And so even if your coach was a legit independent contractor, California is going to force you to pay them W-2, which is now an additional 15%. That happened late last year.
Oh, that's brutal.
A Supreme Court case. Yeah, it's really brutal. Texas is pretty good because most microgyms are under $1 million in revenue. And so they'll avoid the franchise tax and they don't have any state income tax. So from a tax standpoint, that's good. Florida doesn't have any state tax either. And we haven't had any too weird rules. The weirdest rule in Florida that I found is that they charge sales tax on rental income. So if you're one of those gym owners who are doing really well and you even bought your space,
nice.
Florida actually will make you charge sales tax if you have them in 2 separate entities, which is a really smart idea liability-wise. I have my building over here on one hand, and then I have my gym over here. I want to keep those liabilities separate. And so my gym will pay rent just like it's a landlord. Mm-hmm. In Florida, even though you're an owner, they're going to make you charge sales tax on that. It's really stupid. That's the only weird rule. So Florida's the only one where we're like, you need to talk to an attorney, make sure you have liability protection, but we want to figure out how you're not actually paying rent. You're just paying off your loan.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some ideas.
What about entities? I mean, I've always had an S Corp. Do you have any preference on those?
We do. For gym owners, S Corps is more often than not the best scenario. There are Tennessee and California, sometimes based on the revenue that they're making, it might not make sense based on the franchise taxes which is a franchise tax is really just the state saying, even though you're also going to pay income tax on this personally, we're also going to charge you an additional business tax because we wrote it into law and we want to. And that's really what a franchise tax is. So there's weird scenarios, but I would say for 95% of gym owners, we recommend the S Corp. And the main reason is because of this differentiation between what the tax code calls passive income versus ordinary income. And ordinary income, which is the type of revenue owning a gym and getting gym membership fees would be classified as in the tax code. Ordinary income has the self-employment tax component tied to it, meaning it's self-employment income. And so you pay your income tax, but then you also pay this 15.3% tax on top of that. the S Corp is the best entity that allows you to minimize that 15.3% self-employment tax hit. And that's why we like that. That's not to say partnerships can't work. But again, there's some nuances there that depending on the situations, generally we recommend having an S Corp somewhere in their tax structure.
Awesome. Yeah, I just opened a personal S Corp just for all things because I just know how beneficial it is. I mean, I'm not going to talk about my taxes, but it did pretty well for most years, with
totally.
taxes.
We even recommend if your coaches make a certain amount of money and they're independent contractors, they should also have their own S Corp.
Yeah, sure.
Let them take advantage of the same tax rules that all these other big businesses get to take advantage of, especially after tax reform. After 2018 tax reform, W-2 employees can't write off, unless they're military, they can't write off expenses they incur for their employment. And guess what? Coaches are probably buying supplements so they can stay fit and not sore from all the work of coaching. They're probably buying workout attire. They're probably driving to the gym. They probably have a cell phone so they can be in contact with members and the owner and the GM. All of those are potential business expenses. As a W-2 employee, they do not get to claim those anywhere anymore.
Yeah. If they write programming, they have a home office, right?
Yep.
Love that. Yeah. That's really crazy. What about international? Do you work with a lot of international clients as well?
We don't.
Yeah.
We're US based. We can help people if they have international income. Obviously, we can make sure that's filed the right way on their US based tax return. But no, we don't do any foreign tax returns.
Interesting, man. Yeah. So tell us about your book.
Okay. It's called Profit First for Microgyms. And in case anyone was asking, yes, Mike Michalowicz knows that I wrote the book.
He's going to try to sneak that one by.
I mean, there was a post when I first mentioned it and one guy responded, sometimes there are those people who just can't help but be dicks. It's like, does Mike know that you're like taking his concept? Like, actually, he's the one who recommended I write the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very aware. It is a derivative book of his original Profit First, but it's written specifically for the micro gym owner because there are tweaks that they need to make. The numbers from Mike's analysis, he didn't look at micro gyms for the percentages. And so that's why there was a need for a different book. The publication date is January 7th. You can actually pre-order it now. But the main point of the book obviously is following the Profit First system. But one thing that I found working with, we currently have 280 active CrossFit clients. We've added 100 in the last year. I imagine we're going to continue with that trend. And microgyms across the board. But a lot of times the gym owner, there's this hesitation when we start talking to them. They know they need more money. They know they can't continue on the way it is. But deep down, that martyrdom syndrome you mentioned earlier on, that's a real thing. And there's this aspect of health and fitness, and what we do as microgym owners in the fitness industry literally changes humanity. People, we can fix the medical system, the insurance system. If everybody were more fit, like so many elements of humanity improve and change. And sometimes because it's such a noble outcome, they have a hard time accepting that they deserve to make money off of it. But the truth is, everyone's members, they're asking you to be profitable, right? They're not asking you necessarily to say, hey, I want you to overcharge me and, take all my money. But they're saying, I want you to be able to focus on my experience. I want you to be able to improve the gym so that my experience continues to improve as well. You can't do that without profitability. And so the underlying main message of the book is that gym owners deserve to be profitable. Even though the outcome of what you do is noble, doesn't take away from the fact that the value you're creating and you need to receive that value back in the form of profitability. Because guess what? All the gym owners who suffered through the martyrdom syndrome and never convinced themselves they deserve to be profitable, they're not in business anymore. they're not changing lives anymore. You need profit to be able to continue to change lives. Simple enough.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We should have led with that whole pump up speech right there. That was awesome. And it's so true, man. I can't agree more. I think, what you mentioned about such a noble outcome, because, and it's just not gym owners. I mean, we can branch this out and say a large percentage of the fitness population or the fitness professional population
Absolutely.
is, concern themselves with market, because, within the fitness industry, I've interviewed 500 people within the fitness industry in the last 2 years, asking people all the time why they get into it. I just really want to help people. I got out of my corporate job because I hated it, and I found fitness because I get to help people. I get to change lives, right? And that's awesome. I mean, it says a lot about an industry overall that people really want to help, right? But then you dig in a little bit deeper, and you're like, yeah, but Eric, I'm freaking broke. Like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, well, let's talk about the numbers. Like, you deserve to make money. You can make six figures in this and be happy and have greater energy and be able to team and all these things. So, I think your message hopefully resonates with some people because it's a really powerful one.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Believe it or not, we just blasted through like almost 50 minutes of chatting about really sexy accounting.
Sexy accounting. People don't get it. But once you do, it's like, that is sexy.
Start a new hashtag. Awesome, man. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. And where do people find you and your book when it's ready?
So the book, you can go to profitfirstformicrogyms.com.
Okay.
You can also find it we'll have a link on our website, insighttax.com. If anyone wants to reach out to me with questions of anything we talked about, john@insighttax.com is the best email right now. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I thank you very much.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, John Briggs. Hey, fitness fans, don't leave yet. It's your host, Eric Malzone, and I have a quick favor to ask. Actually, 3 favors. So, number 1, if you're a fan of our show, I ask you to do something that takes under 3 minutes. Go to iTunes, please, and subscribe to our show. Please, please, please. It means so much to us. It's so important. And then give us a favorable review. We would really, really appreciate it. And I can't tell you how much it means and helps us out. So I know it takes 2 minutes of your day, and it means a lot to us. So please do that. Number 2, go to our YouTube channel, our Fitness Marketing Alliance, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel there. Number 3, if you like this episode or any of the episodes that we've released, share it on social. That's huge. That's a big deal for us. And we put a lot of work into these episodes, trying to give you great, actionable content for the fitness industry. So that would mean a lot. And that's it. So we have some big plans coming up for this show. I'll be talking about that in the next couple episodes. But thank you so much for listening. It means so much. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from everybody. Eric, ERIC, @fitnessmarketingalliance.com.